like the global ramifications of Ukraine war, which has amplified the global competition between US and China. Uh, North Korea breaking a record for missile launches in 2022. Uh, China's proactive and assertive security policy in South China Sea and Taiwan Strait, and Japan unveiling record defense budget as well as AUKUS military alliance between the US, Australia, and UK. What do you think would likely be the long-term implications of such a growingly security-oriented regional tendency in Asia? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that question. And I hope that my answer doesn't surprise you. If you live in Asia, you tend to be very optimistic about the future, especially in East Asia. But if you talk to Europeans or to some extent the Americans, you feel very pessimistic about the future. And it may be a classic case of one side seeing the glass half empty and the other side seeing the glass half full. So we Asians see the glass half full because the last 30 years of socio-economic development in Asia have been the best 30 years in 3,000 years of our history. So we are very happy in East Asia. And the next 30 years, I'll give you some data, will also be better for us. Now, each of the issues you mentioned, number one, Ukraine. The Ukraine war is completely irrelevant to East Asia. Okay, it may affect to some extent US-China relations, but China, if you notice, has been very restrained in its support of Russia. Indeed, the real secret of the China-Russia relationship is that there is a lot of suspicion between China and Russia.
We are sorry to interrupt you, but before we move on to the next point, we noticed that a lot of you are returning viewers who have not subscribed. If you've enjoyed our content, subscribing would mean the world to us. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Thank you for your support.
In theory, they are allies. In practice, they're very suspicious of each other. And that's why you notice China hasn't helped Russia in any significant way on the Ukraine war. In fact, the China was very upset with Russia for launching the Ukraine war because in the year 2022, when President Xi Jinping was working towards his third term in office, he wanted calm and stability. Instead, he got a very painful war in Europe. So the Ukraine war, China was not happy about it, number one. And then when you mention North Korea missile tests, the North Koreans have been doing tests for 30 years, 40 years, but there's no war. Mm-hmm. And I predict there'll be no war in the Korean Peninsula. So don't worry. The only reason why the North Koreans fire tests is to get attention. And I think and I always say that, frankly, the best thing the United States could do is to establish diplomatic relations with North Korea, because diplomacy was invented to talk to enemies. And once the United States established diplomatic relations with North Korea, the North Koreans don't feel that they have to carry out tests, to get attention. Now, there will be no war also on the South China Sea. There are differences between the 4 ASEAN states, Vietnam, Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, and China, over issues in the South China Sea. But there'll be lots of private negotiations, private consultations between the two sides. So I'm not pessimistic there'll be any kind of war. And certainly at this stage, since China needs the ASEAN, I think China will be very careful and restrained on the South China Sea. Now, the most explosive issue is the one you mentioned is, of course, of the ones you mentioned is Taiwan. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that if Taiwan declares independence, China will declare war on Taiwan. That's very, very clear. Because, and this is the result of the century of humiliation that China suffered, from 1842 to 1949. And, by the way, just for your listeners here, I produced a free edX course, EDX course, on China's century of humiliation. I recommend it to you because to understand why China behaves the way it does, it's important to understand that part of China's history, the century of humiliation, because Taiwan was first separated from China. Taiwan used to be part of China. It was separated from China after China lost the Sino-Japanese War in 1895. That was part of the century of humiliation. So for China, getting Taiwan back eventually is something that is non-negotiable. But at the same time, China is not in any hurry. And so if you leave the status quo alone, don't change anything. And if Taiwan continues to maintain that it is still representing all of China, which is what it claims, of course it says it's the Republic of China, and the People's Republic of China claims it represents all of China, then both agree that there's one China. So if the United States doesn't change its one China policy, then there'll be no war across the Taiwan Strait. And here I must say, by the way, that one of the positive developments of recent times was that President Joe Biden had a very good meeting with President Xi Jinping in November during the G20 meeting in Bali. And I think after that meeting, the temperature on the Taiwan Straits went down. And I can tell you, I happened to meet the President of Indonesia, President Jokowi. I had breakfast with him in Bali at the G20 meeting site 2-3 days before the G20 meeting. And I told President Jokowi, I said, if you can arrange a good meeting between President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping, the world will thank you for it. And he said, don't worry, I'll give them the nicest room in Bali for the meeting between President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping. And I think he did, because as you saw, they had a successful meeting, and the relations between US and China to some extent has stabilized since that meeting. And I hope that Secretary of State Antony Blinken will go to Beijing. I hope that the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will go to Beijing, and this will help to stabilize the relationship a bit. So overall, I'm not pessimistic on the issues that you raise.
So, do you agree with Professor Kishore Mahbubani?
What do you guys think? Do you guys think he is right when he said that China will declare war if Taiwan declare its independent? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.